just not there. Hey, I just want to welcome, we did get, I got 6 people jumped on early. So I just wanted to, not early, but on time. Thank you for being on time. Bethany, Jack, M. Greenfield, Richard Anon, Russ Blatt from OCR Buddy, and William McKnight. I think, do you know Russ?
Yeah, I know all the people who are on. So thank you guys.
All those people. Oh, look at that. Okay, good. Friends are joining in. So we're just kind of getting started. So Robert, you guys know Robert, so I won't go into a long belabored introduction.
Sorry to cut you off. Are you able to like change it where I can see everybody, or not really?
We can't. So I did this because I didn't know the numbers and I didn't want to have screens of video.
I just wasn't sure. So
no. So you're fine. Just you and me are going to be visible. Hey, you guys that are watching, here's your chance. Start. There's a Q&A, button at the bottom. I think you can use chat as well on these things. I haven't done one quite like this before, but you can do chat or Q&A. Feel free to say hi. Get some of your questions going. We were just chatting about DecaFit and Spartan racing and High Rocks and how all these hybrids are coming in and sort of how the training differs, between them. But this is really, about your questions and things you're kind of curious about with Robert training. I met Robert, I don't know, 6 years ago or something, because he was living up in Longmont, Colorado. I was down here in Boulder. I said, hey, I got this funny looking device, I think might be good for OCR racing, because we really believe in it. And I just sent one out to Robert, and he played with it for a while, and we were very, gratified that he, really saw its uses for OCR racing. But this isn't really to talk about WearBands, it's really to talk about training for OCR. And I'm gonna start a question because I'm 58, and I had a question here from a guy. He's down in, I don't know if he's tuned in yet. He's no, his name's Ben Congerton. I think he's down in New Zealand or Australia. He said he bumped into you at Tahoe once. He sent me a picture of you two together at Tahoe. And he's 48. So, and I know Robert, Robert's still young compared to me. He's 20 years younger than me, but he's a lot older than the people he's competing against. And I know as a middle-aged dad of 3, trying to, if I can find 2 or 3 times a week to work out for 30 or 40 minutes, I feel like pretty good about myself. So maybe one way you can do is talk about, as you sort of get older, you got family, there's tons of Spartan racers out there and other OCR racers, that are juggling these things. They'd like to find more time, but they can't. So why don't we start with some general kind of tips, tricks? How much do you train? How do you squeeze it in? How do you make sure that it's not just, random, but it has a purpose to it?
Yeah. So, there's a lot to obstacle course training in general. But yes, definitely having a family and having to balance that is a different aspect that not all the top pros have been challenged with. So me getting into it, initially, it was actually pretty easy because my kids were like very young. Like my daughter was only born 3 weeks before I won the world championship in 2015. So I still to this day don't know how I pulled that off, because I was getting like no sleep. And, we were in the children's hospital because she had complications upon birth. She had amniotic fluid in her lungs. So we were actually there while they were literally saving her life. And we slept at the hospital for a couple of weeks, and I was training, on some of the mountain peaks, like right behind the children's hospital in Colorado. But I wasn't, again, trying to train as much as I thought I would need to win at Tahoe. But somehow, the stars aligned and I was able to pull it off. But when they were young at that age, you can incorporate them with a bob stroller. So I was pushing, my daughter and my son a lot, or they have these backpacks you can wear. So I would try to take them on my hikes kind of in the afternoon as my second workout. And then of course in the bikes, you have bike chariots and stuff. So when they were young, it was pretty easy because, as long as you had a diaper, a bottle, and it wasn't too hot, or you had a blanket or something, most of the time they'd fall asleep, or, just, it was kind of an easy incorporation into my workout. And it made it harder pushing, a stroller and trying to get them into kind of outside and into, the stroller and get them all settled. But of course, they would go to daycare and I would get in my other workouts that I needed for quality. But I think now that they're a little bit older, if they don't have that tablet, or if their friends are outside, or, now they don't want to go out, hang out with dad and get, they're too big for a stroller too. So now I'm actually finding it a little bit more difficult at this, 6 to 8, almost, I don't know how it'll be once they're 10 or something, but at this age, we just go to the gym and they really like to play in the child's area. So yeah, just getting them into the gym and getting them also excited about the sport. So they have kids races obviously at all these events. So they love to go out and do them too. So a lot of times I can, if I'm doing grip work out on my rig, they'll also come out and, try to do some dead hangs or try to go from ring to ring or, just hang out outside with me, messing around on the rope climb, swinging, and
Right.
So I think that's what's kind of cool about obstacle course racing is the kids kind of see the training ground as a playground in an aspect. But yeah, I think that's the biggest way I've been incorporating and balancing, my family life there. And then a little bit more difficult now, juggling a job full time as well. Because again, your time is your most precious thing and how you spend it. So I try to either get up early in the morning to do my workouts before the kids wake up. And then there's a short transition before they go to school. And then I have to work. And then in the evenings, I'm getting in, going to the gym and trying to do a strength workout. Or I do have a pretty cool system on my bike, my mountain bike, where I can now pull my one child and they can like pedal too. So that's still an incredibly hard workout.
Oh, yeah.
When you're trying to go up hills or they get tired and they're not doing any work. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest way is just to try to incorporate them and get them excited about it.
So it doesn't sound like it's like the training, like at least the way you train, it's not super specialized. Like I got to do this. Like I do. The idea is just to get out there, get your heart rate up, do the
No, I guess it
sport,
is.
whether you're mountain biking. I mean, how do you keep it specific to to obstacle course racing?
Yeah, so to go into that, I mean, I could sit here and talk about this for hours, but because
I got more questions. So.
obstacle course racing isn't like a 5K, on a track or a 10K on the road, or even a marathon, because most of those conditions and courses are very predictable. You're going to be on a road, it's going to be pretty flat. You're not going to have any undulating terrain, especially on a track. So you do a lot of speed specific, pace specific training, and you work, on probably time versus distance. But in obstacle course racing, we all know that a course in Texas might be completely different than a course in, Colorado or up in Killington, Vermont, Tahoe, some of those big mountainous venues. So I like to look at my races and train based off of the venue. So I look at how much elevation gain there is, what kind of terrain, is it on a big mountain resort? What were the obstacles kind of like the previous year? Because you can kind of predict Spartan and other obstacle course race brands pre-position their obstacles regionally. So you might not see the same obstacles at every course. And there are some, like Chicago has some obstacles that you wouldn't see at some of the other venues. So I would look at that and do some specific training, especially in the mountains, because the sandbag carries are heavy uphill. And they usually like to incorporate some of those strength type obstacles into the beast, not so much for the super and the sprint. So you can kind of pick your distance, pick your venue, and then back plan your training off of that. And then another way that I also, I guess, kind of take full advantage of how recovered my body is I use Whoop and heart rate variability every morning, depending how rested I am or how capable I am of taking on a hard workout. I'll adjust that to, hey, today's going to be an endurance day because I'm in the green and I can really maximize my cardiovascular improvement by doing, a threshold workout, really good intervals. Whereas if I'm in the red or I'm yellow, I'm kind of lagging, I might just do a long, slow run, not really worry about pace, or just go to the gym and not even run at all, do a bike or like some low impact, or even WearBands and just do like a 1 mile run and work muscle stabilizers that you need for specific venues. And that is one huge way that I incorporate WearBands is whenever I look at a venue where there's going to be a lot of felt running, let's say like West Virginia, where you're in the woods, you're going to have to do a lot of high stepping. You're going to have to, be able to manipulate your feet very fast to go through some of that terrain if you want to like be competitive and win the race. Like that's where I get a huge advantage in the woods. I can run away from almost everybody who can beat me, on the roads or in a flat or other types of terrain. But I do that training to work those specific muscles that allow me to move my legs like up and down like super fast. And I haven't found another system other than WearBands that helps me with that. So that's kind of like my OCR secret weapon. But
And can you talk? I mean, maybe the people are listening right now know more about this than I do. But fell running, what's the theory there, and how do you learn it?
Yeah, so fell running is more like, yeah, when you're in a type of terrain that you can't, fully stride, or you can't, get into your normal gait, your running gait, and you just have to kind of adapt, and you're going to get a little bit more tired because you're not able to get into that rhythm. So a lot of people will panic, or they'll freak out, or they'll start to shorten their stride, or they'll start to, just slow down their pace. So you're kind of like fell running. You're kind of like, you just can't really get into, your normal running pace. And yeah, this happens a lot in the woods, running in sand a little bit. And it really opens the door up for anyone, especially people who have more grit or kind of like a higher cardio base, because typically it wears you out a little bit more, a lot more than, running on flat or running on a normal terrain. So yeah, I've been really good at that, especially training at elevation in the past, where I don't get as elevated as a heart rate, so it doesn't fatigue me as much. And I tend to I have an orienteering background in the military, so we do a lot of orienteering competitions. I've been over to Austria to compete internationally, where you're literally just running through the woods with a compass. There aren't any trails, there aren't any like markers or nothing. You just gotta have a map and a compass, and you have to navigate the fastest way that you feel possible to get to that, that control point before anyone else. And I think that helped me a lot with fell running and kind of understanding how to run through the woods. Because when I first started, I was like, just running, and I'm worried about what I'm stepping on. I'm not looking where I'm going. And then all of a sudden I see these guys, run by at like 4-minute pace per mile. And I'm like, dude, how do they do that? They're just like, they just send it, dude. They don't even care. So again, you build your ankle strength by the use of things like WearBands, by doing specific training strength wise in the gym, so that you don't roll your ankle, or you don't, have a potential injury, because your stabilizers are so strong. Or even just practicing fell running a lot. I do a lot of mountain specific training that I know there's very, very technical, tough terrain with rocks and all kinds of stuff, so that when I see it in a race, I don't have to slow down. I can go faster, or I can, go at the pace that I'm comfortable at, because I've been training for that specific
Right.
technicality.
Right. I practice that sometimes, because I imagine the problem most people have: your legs get heavy, right? You're not quite watching where you're going. You think you're gonna get over that rock, but you don't, right? And then you're down
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
yeah, exactly. Or you're just hesitant about your stride, or about, I don't know. And then the other thing that I've found is, if you're doing fell running in the winter, a lot of times you won't even get your heart rate up to the right, because you're going so much slower than you usually do. You can get cold. That happened in New Jersey a couple years ago, where we had, people literally getting hypothermia, even though they were racing, because it was raining and it was cold, and they weren't running at a fast enough pace to get their heart rate at the level that they needed to stay warm, because it was literally just all fell running in the woods.
Right.
So yeah, and even in Tahoe with that snow in 2019, it was very similar, because you saw a layer of snow and you were like, I don't know what's under that. It could be a rock, so you were very light stepped, and you weren't really, every step you were kind of like, ooh, am I going to step? You kind of like tense up, and it really does play with your psyche a little bit.
Yeah, right. Right. And then you talked about like your gym work. Everybody was admiring the rig you had. I think somebody said it was in your backyard in Colorado. They wanted to know if you set it back up in Virginia. But how much time do you spend like on gym work versus, because you mentioned earlier when we were talking before we started that, that OCR racing is really an endurance sport. How long can you run, how fast, and that the obstacles matter, and you have to, you don't want to waste time, but the most successful people are the ones that do well in between the obstacles, and the obstacles aren't always big difference makers. So how much time do you spend, in the gym versus I'm going to go out and train, on the trails?
Yeah, well, I would say your gym time, that's not necessarily like it will help you with the obstacles. And there are specific obstacles that people have problems with: rope climb, grip obstacles where they have to support their body weight. So, those are really easy with pull-ups, body weight specific type training, dead hangs, farmer carries, learning a good technique for the rope climb, like an S-wrap or a J-hook. Having someone at the gym teach you that can really get you through those obstacles. But all the rest, the time that you spend in the gym is more for injury prevention. It's to strengthen your muscles, your tendons, and make them strong because of the type of running that you're doing, where you need a full body effort to really do a lot of the stuff that obstacle course racing demands. Your
Right.
core needs to be strong. I mean, your calves, your arms, your back, especially for climbing. A lot of people don't know your lower back just gets taxied when you're hunched over trying to go uphill, especially with a bucket or a sandbag. So, a lot of that type of training I do in the gym. And, there's obviously two different types of ways to train in the gym. You can do heavy weight with low reps and really try to build mass, or you can do medium weight with high reps and try to build strength and endurance. And that's more what we need for OCR. So I'm not super big, but I'm like, I guess like ripped, or I can handle my weight plus another 45 pounds if I need to on my back for a while, but I can't go into like a CrossFit competition, or even high rocks like you guys have probably seen lately, and push like a massive heavy sled without getting injured. So I think that's one of the things that I need to learn is I may be strong and I feel like I can do these things that CrossFitters do, but it takes a focused effort. If you want to be well balanced in obstacle course racing to transition, to something like CrossFit, you would have to focus more on strength versus more on endurance.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and yeah, so that's kind of my mindset when I go to the gym. I usually go 2 to 3 days a week. I like to go and really focus on full body. So a lot of days, people go, okay, today I'm gonna work on my back. Tomorrow I'm gonna work on my chest. Tomorrow I'm gonna, work on leg day. So I like to just go and do a full body because that's how obstacle course racing is. Your body, and I do supersets and I do circuits. So I don't necessarily go, okay, I'm gonna sit down and do 3 sets of bench, and then I'm gonna go over here and do 3 sets of lat pulls or something. I go to the bench, and then I'll go do squats, and then I'll go to the air bike, and then I'll go do farmer carries, and then I'll do abs, and then I'll go over to the concept rower. So that's typically what I'll do. I'll hit like a leg, an arm, and then just a quick burst of cardio, like a high intensity, like 2 minutes. I'll just go 1,000 meters on the ski erg, or 1,000 meters on the rower, or 50 cals on the watt bike, or the air bike, and I'll do that, for 45 minutes or an hour or more at a time, and just see you know, how many circuits I can go through with whatever I've established that I want to do that day. And then, yes, for my rig, I brought a very small portion of it, but I set something similar up in my backyard where I have, rings and ropes and stuff that you might see on a rig. And I just kind of hit those as able, because even when I was going to a type of ninja grip specific gym in Colorado Springs, the absolute max I could do was like 45 minutes. And my hands would either, have holes in the, calluses and bleeding, or my forearms were just like completely done. So, so yeah, I guess there is like a threshold for how much grip you can do in a day before it starts to get a little counterproductive.
Right.
And you do want to try to, sand off your calluses if at all possible. They make these sanding stones that are quite nice. It might sound a little girly, but when you rip a callus, and you can't train for like 2 weeks and you've lost all your gains, then
Right.
it's not so girly anymore. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe I should start to sand some of these off and do some maintenance on my hands, because that's the most important thing in obstacle course racing, and grip obstacles. You gotta have um healthy hands.
Yeah. And hey, William chimed in here, William McKnight. He was asking about, which you talked about a little bit earlier, maybe before the conference actually started, but the difference between deciding between OCR and these functional fitness competitions, and because they're not the same, and the skill set's not the same, and if you're, you know, right, should you, if you try to prepare for both of them, you'll probably be poorly prepared for both of them, right? Or can you figure out a way to train that it can make you sort of competitive in each?
I don't know. I think that's what's awesome about the sport kind of progressing, and you have these other little, DecaFit and High Rocks and some of the other functional fitness that aren't so CrossFit heavy, where, yeah, obstacle course racers can successfully do those and specialize. So I consider myself kind of like, I love, the beast distance, and I love hard mountain races, but I also really love like stadiums. I love like short course, but it's like high intensity. It's not like, you're taking a lot of turns, you're having to go up and down the stadium. Um, it's not so much like that with DecaFit. Obviously, it's flat, it's on concrete. Same with High Rocks. There's like zero elevation gain. But I do like the element of going, into fitness stations and coming out like exhausted, and seeing how different athletes can kind of adapt to that type of racing, versus a longer endurance, in, like terrain and weather are often the biggest obstacles in OCR that no one even thinks about. They're like, oh, rope climb, spear throw. And I'm like, no, dude, it's all about running, terrain, and weather. Like, they can impact the entire race, way more so than any other obstacles that I've seen lately. But I do like the aspect of, you can kind of balance it more if you're only training for a 30-minute race, right? So you don't necessarily need to train for 4 or 5 hours a day like you would if you're trying to be really good at a beast, versus, a short course race. So in that aspect, if you're kind of short on time, or you don't have a lot of time, then I think you would be more successful, because you don't have to put in as much work, endurance wise, and you can see pretty good results. It's a lot of intervals, a lot of, improving your lactate threshold and improving your speed, and then maintaining your strength, so that you don't get completely flattened at the fitness stations. And one of the reasons I made that transition is because, COVID, there weren't a lot of other OCR events going on, and I have done 105 Spartan races. So like, everybody wants to do something new and just try, even if it's not your cup of tea, or, you're getting out of your comfort zone. And I do like it. I found it was challenging, and it helped me incorporate different ways of training that I do think will, benefit my overall, obstacle course racing, side of the house as well.
Yeah, right, right. And then Bethany has asked, Bethany Diaz, she's asked about wear bands, and where do you, is wear band something you use for more kind of endurance work? Is it more kind of slower, controlled movements, injury prevention, types of things, or is it more for kind of, explosive power?
I would say more explosive, and then short endurance, maybe, for a mile or so. You can start to build up to where you can go 2 to 3 miles. But again, the first time you use it, even for half a mile, if you've never used it before, your muscles are going to be sore. I would definitely recommend like the WearBands, or, one of the lighter, resistances, so that you can ease into some of the heavier stuff that you would increase the resistance and do some more explosive type power. But really, the sky's the limit. That's what's so kind of unique and cool about them, is you can really just do it, do whatever you're doing, and add wear bands and see how it, kind of helps, because you can pretty much do any movement. Like, I'm not going to go run around with the barbell, or, I'm not going to try to do box jumps with a barbell, or, like other exercises, but you can do that with wear bands. You can just do every normal function that you can walk around and do stuff on. You can, put on wear bands, and kind of level up your, your deadlifts, or your squats, um, you're running. And I use it more again for running in the woods and fell running. Like that's where I've seen the biggest gains for me personally. Is when I do, just a mile or two in them, and I feel those stabilizer muscles that don't get fatigued, because you don't always use them for the entirety of the race. But yeah, and then I haven't done a lot of incorporation with the arms. That's kind of a newer aspect of WearBands, but I think that's, just as big of a capability. Is you can really, work on some of the muscles that you don't necessarily get to work in other aspects, just because of how the resistance is coming from a central point versus all the other exercises that you see in a gym. You're having to pull or contract. You're not coming from inside out. You're always coming from outside in. So in that aspect, it works. The resistance works in a different way, and especially for running, I mean, it lowers the impact that your foot has on the ground, because when you're pushing down, the band is pulling up as you're kind of forcing that resistance down. So yes, you're having to work harder to push your foot, but it's also, you're not hitting as hard because you have that resistance. So it kind of helps with like knee pain and stuff like that. And you do have some transition time though to get your shoes a little bit acclimated. So a lot of people will have pain around their foot just in the first couple of times using it. So you absolutely cannot tighten your shoes too tight, because you will feel that neoprene sock kind of adding to a little bit extra pressure. And of course, it all depends on what kind of feet you have. I have super flat feet, so it doesn't really feel so
Flat feet are the biggest issues when we hear that, because it puts some extra pressure on your arch. And people that have flat feet, that's kind of a weak point.
Yeah, and people who don't would be like, I don't have any problems, so it just all depends on the person.
We hear it. We hear it every once in a while. It's always flat feet, and I wish we'd come up with a solution for that. But
I mean, yeah.
it's. I mean, hopefully, it will strengthen that arch and strengthen that foot over time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, like I said, it's usually at the beginning. And I do want to emphasize what Robert says. A lot of people see rubber bands and they're like, "Come on, these are rubber bands. I can put these on and go run for a mile." Well, your body, when you run, there's a lot of eccentric and concentric movement. So your muscles are usually sort of getting a break one way or the other. Coming, as you're running, you're not, you're calling on your muscles in short little staccato bursts, really. WearBand's a little bit different because it's sort of like extra gravity. It's you're putting your muscles under that resistance for an extended period of time, and that's really the difference. So you don't need to add a lot of extra resistance if it's being applied almost constantly, which is not what we're used to. But if you can do it and move freely, we believe it has benefits. So yeah, we hear that a lot. People come back and say, "Oh my God, I was so sore." I said, well, I put on the yellow bands because the green bands look too thin. I'm like, we tell people, please start with the green band, because and now your body will adjust. It's a funny thing, and everybody's ever used it's gone through. Your body will adjust pretty quickly to this resistance, but the first few times, it's muscles are being activated you don't normally activate. They're being activated over a longer period of time, and that is going to have a physiological effect over time in a good way. But be careful. Start slow with WearBands and build your way up. that's all I want to say about that. Russ asked a question that's, it's not about training, but it's a great question. He wants to know, like, what direction do you think the sport is really progressing towards? Do you think they're staying with the 5K to endurance lengths, or are they going to shorter stadium track sprint 3K events? I don't know. COVID obviously has something to do with this as well, but generally, which direction do you think the sport's going in?
I don't know. Yeah, with COVID, I'm just glad to see any events, finally starting to kick back off, and a lot of companies are trying to get back on their feet. I think had COVID not hit, we were on a super good glide path for shorter type stadium. We were going to do a stadium world championship. I mean, they had all these short course events coming out with DecaFit doing a proper launch, High Rocks being very popular. Spartan was going to do their Spartan Cross, which, I don't know where that's at. They made an announcement they were going to do something last month in May, but they didn't follow up on that, which is, not a huge surprise. But I think they were looking at, how, I guess, spectator friendly shorter courses are and how exciting they are. We saw in Hildervat, especially with the team format, just 2-minute laps and the whole race was over in like 8 minutes. So it was like, in that aspect, it's kind of cool. But on the endurance side, I mean, there is that potential for, I mean, it's been successful for, 5 or 6 years. Now, as far as it being on TV and being, broadcast, before, it was just starting out, so it didn't have that attention. But I mean, yeah, I feel like we just got robbed with COVID because we were on ESPN, like the World Championships was on ESPN. I mean, we were there, and then everything just kind of took like 4 steps back now, for all that progress. And I know, there's been a push to try to get into the Olympics and to get a format into the Olympics. And it's just really hard to do when brands don't want to partner with the governing bodies. So that's just been a massive hurdle that we haven't been able to get over. And there are certain mindsets and brands, that they just want to conduct their business and be a for-profit business and not really have sport progression, or they want to just progress their brand versus the entirety of the sport. So I would say it's still very young. I mean, even like rock climbing and surfing just got into the Olympics a couple of years ago, and they've been around forever, like forever. So yeah, I think I would like to see, just like swimming or track and field or any other, Olympic events, multiple distances. Like there's no reason there shouldn't be, but of course we just do have to get like that first foot in the door and get an interest. And of course, because Ninja is so popular in short course format, other shows, that I can't remember the name of it. Exhalation, I think is what Isaiah's been on most recently, and Mac. But those type of short, kind of like fast formats with obstacles are what spectators on TV like. So that's what the U.S. Olympic Committee is going to lean more towards, because they get paid by broadcasting ratings. So that's where they make their money. So if it doesn't look good for TV, they're probably not going to want to have an appetite to hear about it. So we'll see. I mean, I'd love to be more involved than I have been, but I mean, yeah, with COVID and just how everything's been going on, it's been a struggle even for me being the captain of the Spartan pro team, the biggest pro team, the most predominant, and I'm the 2-time world champion. I can't even get an audience to have brands listen to me or the athletes, to really help give our opinions and to provide some feedback and some guidance on the way ahead and how they can improve the relationship with the sport, the relationship with the athletes, the product, like all that. They don't inquire about our input at all. Even as contracted athletes, you would think that would be one of the things that I would have as the number one thing is, hey, you're required to give some feedback because you're the subject matter expert. You're the one out there doing the races, right. Talking to the fans and stuff like that. But long story short, so
yeah, I mean, yeah, these big companies all have their own visions, and it's hard to know. Sometimes lots of stakeholders, right? And
yeah, but I mean,
challenged it.
I'm just excited, that I want to be a mentor for the younger athletes and try to make sure that they had the same opportunities that I have, for one, and don't fall under how track and field is with Rule 40, where you have all these mandates about what you're allowed to wear, but your sponsors are the ones that are really helping you, and you can't really help promote them. So then it becomes challenging to even be an athlete. Even during COVID last year, I found that out. You're a contractor, like nobody cares about you when a pandemic hits. You don't get unemployment benefits. You don't get workman's comp or anything like that. And Spartan gets payroll protection plan. They get all these overheads that help. And I don't know if that goes to their employees, but it definitely doesn't go to the athletes. So yeah, there's some challenges that.
Well, it's still, and the sport's still in that stage, right? Where to be an elite athlete, you're still chasing sponsorships. I mean, you're not,
you're not going to get it off of prize money alone.
Yeah, you're not going to do that. You got to get sponsorships. You got to convince them that enough eyes are on you and eyes are on the broadcast. And like you said, getting on TV on ESPN, that was the real blow, because that
Yeah,
could
and if that's
that
how
could take
they
you a step up.
and if that's how they want the sport to progress, that's how it happens. It has to be competitive. It has to be exciting. You can't have like one guy out there just an hour ahead of everybody. Nobody's going to watch that. It has to be, anybody could win that day. Or, that's, you look at the most exciting sports and it's like there are some betting odds, but I mean, a lot of the times anything could happen. Like that's what people want to see. So
Right.
we provide that as professional athletes. We provide the high level of competition.
Right.
So there has to be a partnership, or it's never going to get to that point of
Yeah.
it being, an Olympic sport, or
Yeah.
being a, popular format.
Yeah. I want to get a question from Miguel Medina. I don't know. Do you know Miguel?
Yep.
Miguel. Yeah. He was kind of asking just about your race experiences. What was your, what do you consider kind of like your worst race, like, which happens to everybody, just doesn't happen, and why? And then what do you think, was your best race? And some people might think it's the World Championships, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes something good happens in a lesser race that really stands out to you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think one of my, obviously worst races that I've had was Sweden last year, was it 2019, I guess, because there's this expectation that we could potentially win this $1 million prize if you hit X amount of miles. And for me it was 105. I had the least amount of miles out of anyone to do, but um after I fell off pace, at mile 30, and I was literally like giving it everything I had, I didn't even have enough in the gas tank to really continue going, or my knee was giving me problems. So it just, I don't know, I was kind of hit hard because it's just something that's impossible. Like it's not even close to being achievable. And you go out with that expectation, like I'm going to give everything I have. Well, everything that I have or anyone else on this world had wasn't even like 20 or 30 miles close to what, you could potentially get to. So it was like, I should have stopped at 30, but I was so disgruntled. I went out and still ran 5 more laps and got like 55 miles before I finally was like, all right, I'm not enjoying this. I tried to run myself through this phase of like, man, I feel like I got duped, and I just couldn't get out of my mind for some reason. I've been able to do it in every other race, and I still finished 10th overall. I didn't like drop out, but that was just a race that I kind of struggled mentally with that. But then on the other side of that, in an endurance aspect, at World's Toughest Mudder, getting 105 miles, I think, is my biggest, achievement. That was pretty awesome. Like, as far as OCR, best ranger competition, probably my overall, like, that took a very long time to win. A bunch of second places, a lot of pain, and a lot of training, more so than I have to do for OCR. But going into that, everyone thinks that I'm like this endurance athlete, and I am to an aspect, but I hate ultras, and I hate, my first marathon was at the end of an Ironman triathlon. Like I just like kind of jumped into it, and everyone's like, "You've never done a marathon before?" And I was like, "Well, I did one at the end of an Ironman," but I just never really found a excitement from doing marathon, especially on hot road in an ultra environment or in the woods. I'm all about it.
Right.
But just the regular marathon, I've never had a big interest. So the fact that I went out to World's Toughest Mudder, with very little experience. Of course, it took me a few years to get the equipment right, because you got to run in a wetsuit out there, and it's very cold in the desert at night. I didn't realize how cold, but yeah, I was able to do 100 miles with Chad Trimmel for a team, and then 105 the next year. And I didn't have to go out; I could have just stopped. But it's one of those things where you have, you want to beat your personal goal. Um, and I felt good, and I didn't want to just leave with 100, so I did 105, and that was a pretty memorable, I guess, race for me. Even though I got second, yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then Alex, that's a good question, because you chimed in about flat feet, and he was saying, do you do anything to focus on that, to strengthen your arches, or do you just say, hey, I got flat feet, and that's all there is to it, and I'll just have to work through it?
Yeah, no, I really haven't had a problem. Like, I don't know that I mean, my knees do hurt, but I have done a lot of rucking in the military, jumping out of airplanes. So that is probably my biggest struggle right now is, just trying to get my knees warm for the first mile. And then after about 8 miles, trying to like, just think about, oh man, every step is kind of like slightly painful. I don't think that's related to flat feet, but the only thing that I do is try to get obviously the right neutral shoes that don't hurt my arch. So I'm not going to run in a shoe that's made for somebody who has super high arch because they put an extra like layer that kind of pushes up so that your foot cups around it. And if you have flat feet, then it's like you're not cupping around it, you're kind of like out here, or it really kind of hurts your arch. So yeah, I just try to look for a lot of lower drop shoes, or specifically ones that don't support people with high arches, and I think that helps yeah, quite a lot. But yeah, I don't know, I've had a lot of people come to me and like, dude, how are you able to like ruck and run with flat feet? Like, we've never had anyone who's really like successful. I'll go to like running physiology clinics and stuff, and the University of Boulder, and they give me a hard time always about having, they're like, I've seen some flat feet, but I've never seen flat feet like yours. It's like when my foot goes down, it's like even some people have this, my foot goes down and then it goes even more in, like when I stand up straight, like it just puts all the pressure on my arch. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, and I guess, if you're an athlete and your body kind of adjusts, right? There's probably other parts of your calves or your quads or your stabilized, something had to adjust to keep that from becoming a bigger issue. And we do actually, some people have had a couple, I'd say like 1% of people we hear from at WearBands say, well, these straps are really hurting my arch, I have flat feet. And it's usually the case. And this is just a little plug. We do have a solution. We wear those bungee shoelaces, right? You wear the ones that are kind of stretchy, right?
That's actually my solution for flat feet too, because I mean, over longer distances, your feet do tend to swell. Whether you've got, doesn't matter, like whatever you're doing, your feet are going to swell.
Right.
And that allows for alleviation of pressure, so you're not putting too much stress on your metatarsal and your other bones,
Right.
instead of
And it also happens that those laces, and we've done this to people that say, look, I've tried WearBands, really love the system, but my feet hurt, I got flat feet. So if you have those bungee shoelaces, and we send them out to people free of charge, you can actually clip that front band on WearBands into your bungee shoelaces. And when you do that, that strap's not pulling up on your arch anymore. So it's a way to kind of avoid that. That's been our hack for when occasionally somebody calls and says, we said, here, put these bungee shoelaces in. And that solves the problem, because then you don't have to use that front strap on the system.
Yeah, the same thing happens when you're running up and down hills too. Like when you're going up, if you have your shoelaces too tight, they'll hurt like a lot. It'll put more, you can get like more pressure on the calf. Even like running flat, you can get shin splints, stuff like that. So it's yeah, something I've always loved transitions to elastic laces, because you can have them a little bit looser, and if you just need to do a quick, just pull them up for a speed lace, and you want that tighter shoe for the downhill so you can have a little more control on your descending. You can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And then it's sort of going back, it's kind of interesting. It's like some questions are going back to training kind of efficiently, right? Because most OCR racers, they're not elite racers. They're not doing it for a living. They're not working out 2 or 3 hours a day, and they want to know, okay, well, how do I love OCR racing. How do I do it efficiently? So if you had to, pick, I don't know, if you were an everyday OCR athlete, and you had to pick, okay, I got 4 hours a week to train. How would you do it? Where would you put your time in?
Definitely cardio. I think that's where you'll see the most gains, because it is a lot of running, especially outside in the mud, in that terrain. And you got to look at your equipment and make sure you have that good shoelace or that good shoe, or the right material to allow you to not overheat or get cold, because nutrition and weather, no matter how hard you train, if your nutrition's not on, and you're dehydrated, or you don't have enough calories, it doesn't matter how much you trained. So yeah, definitely focus on nutrition, getting electrolytes, getting enough water in your system, eating whole foods, keeping anything in a box less than 10 ingredients is usually my, sticking points for that. And, obviously try not to eat too many fried or saturated fats. And for training, yeah, focus on endurance, focus on, like running, biking, your cardio, and then 100% grip strength. Like if you can only do one strength thing, just work on your grip because that'll get you through the obstacles that are failed the most. Your twisters, your um, Olympus, your rope climb, your rigs, like all that good stuff. And then, you could practice burpees too. I mean, because I've seen people who don't practice burpees get injured or really fatigued when they're like, oh, I didn't think I would fail that obstacle. And then, you're gonna end up doing a lot of burpees, and that's gonna fatigue you even more to finish and kind of discourage you from doing the race. And then lower back. Let's see, that's another good one. Deadlifts, squats too, to get the hamstrings. So those, 3 workouts, if you can do hamstrings, deadlifts, um, dead hangs, pull-ups, any kind of grip work, farmer carries, and then cardio will get you through most races pretty successfully. So.
And then Alex asked a follow-up question about nutrition and stuff, or nature, Mother Nature. Do you do anything to stimulate,
Yeah,
bad
absolutely.
weather, bad nutrition, bad something to kind of condition yourself for it? And how do you do that?
Yeah, you just, your cycle for bowel movements is about 12 hours, depending on what you eat, how active you are, and how much your body's kind of trained.
Your volume just went down. I don't know if that was just for me or not.
Oh no, sorry, someone's trying to call me on.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to hop up here pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that better or?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So I usually like to have earlier dinners so that when I'm going into that race the next morning or that workout or whatever, you have an earlier bowel movement so you don't have to worry about nature calling when you're racing or running, and that usually solves the problem. And of course, you're going to get those pre-race jitters, anxiety. It's going to speed up your metabolism, and it's going to process your food a little bit faster. And then also what you eat the night before. I usually stick to something basic like a rice or like a pasta, vegetables, a light protein, chicken, or even salmon. And then the morning of, I'll do some oatmeal and like half a banana, right around 5:36. And I'm talking like just half a packet of oatmeal and like half a banana, just something in my stomach for the beast. Um, and sometimes I won't do anything. It's just a shorter fast race because you're going to be at that higher intensity. And sometimes I've had like, I felt like I wanted to throw up just because there's still food, and you're once your heart rate gets over like 155, 160, it'll start to shift all that blood from your stomach, and it'll really cause some issues after the race more so than during the race. But for a beast, if you're kind of in that, or I'm sorry, that threshold zone of like 155, 170-ish, but in an actual like other race, high intensity, you'd be more like 180, 190 towards your like max heart rate. You're giving a full effort. That's when I'd feel that kind of like throw up. So I would just do like a liquid pre-workout, or I'll do something like Tailwind Nutrition that has glycogen. So you have 2 forms of energy that your body uses: fat stores, glycogen stores. And for endurance, there's just an overwhelming amount of research from all the top level um, physiologists and doctors out there that have done studies on all the top cyclists and all the top endurance athletes. And glycogen stores are by far your best form of energy that you can get for sustainable energy for the type of events that we're doing for obstacle course racing. So having you know um, those stores full before your event will help you alleviate having to take in so many calories while you're racing. And the way you figure that out, you can just get a simple metabolic test. I do one with Pinoe Analytics, or you can go to a university and they'll put you on a machine. You'll do a workout. They'll do your your crossover between glycogen and fat stores, and they'll tell you how many calories your body burns per hour per heart rate zone. So then you can plan your nutrition based off of that, and then making sure that you're getting enough glycogen, because it'll tell you how much of that energy is coming from glycogen and how much of it is coming from fat stores. And yeah, I mean, like I said, there's so much detail that you can get into. I'm just trying to give you guys the broad ideas here, but yeah, and then obviously
the real message
always make sure you carry some baby wipes in a Ziploc bag, because you don't ever want to be stuck out there without any means to wipe yourself.
That'll make for an unpleasant race.
You got kids, baby wipes are magic.
Yeah, well, that's one nice thing about having a family. There's baby wipes everywhere.
Yeah, you don't discover those until you have kids. I was like, I never knew about baby wipes.
Genius.
I used to carry around toilet paper, and then it would like get wet in my pocket, and I couldn't even use it. So.
Baby wipes, genius product. Yeah, well, hey, man, I really appreciate it. I know you got to kind of get going, and you're juggling. This is a work day for Robert, so I really, appreciate you making it an hour for us. And this is great. And we are recording this, so I'm going to share it with people, and I'll make sure other people have access to it for those who couldn't make it. And yeah, man, I really, really personally appreciate it. Thanks for supporting our little company and product. It's a funny looking thing, and we're trying to convince the world that it may be funny looking, but it does a lot of things a lot of other things can't do. And we're kind of like you, some of your frustrations with Spartan. We're fighting an industry that's all about 5 or 6 pieces of equipment, and every piece of training is built around that. All the programming is built around that. And we're saying, okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but here's something new. But if the programming is not out there and it looks different, it takes a while. So we certainly appreciate your support along the way, and we'll be following you this summer, see how your racing's going.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, I got all the questions answered. If not, I mean, I think there's not a ton of people on here, so feel free to DM me and all.
Yeah, I'll encourage other people, even people who haven't seen this, if they have some questions, that I'll ship them over to you, and we'll try to get them all eventually answered.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, and just, you guys all have my contact. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying I'm out in Savage Race this weekend, so if you guys are out there, I'll see you on the race course.
You'll be at the Savage Race. All right, man. Take care. Yeah, and everybody, feel free to reach out to me. You have my information and everything, and be happy to answer any other questions or forward some along to Robert if you have some more. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.